Before the success stories, the progress, there was you. You who made a choice to grow, to inspire, to overcome your own challenges. At NASM, we're in service of your limitless potential, because when you keep growing, we all get stronger, and we'll never stop making your journey our mission. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified personal trainer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I am Wendy Batts here with my co-host and friend, Dr. Marty Miller. Marty, how are you?
Great, Wendy. How's it going there today?
It is going great. We're going to just go ahead and jump right on in because we have a very special guest. He is a dear, dear friend of both myself and Marty. We have Ken Miller joining us today. And those of you guys that have been a part of Random Fit, Ken and I do that podcast talking about everything random and fitness. But Ken is also joining us today to really talk about being and opening a business. He is a business owner out in Alameda, California, and owns Training Station, and is, of course, one of our NASM Regional Master Instructors. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Ken on so we can talk about building and sustaining your personal training business. Hi, Ken.
Hey, guys. Great seeing you.
Good to see you.
Well.
All right.
Bringing the team back.
That's right. Yes, Ken, it's always good to see you, and it's been far too long since I've seen you in person. But even before I jump into the first question, it's such a great atmosphere within the NASM family, especially our instructor network, because so many people have gone down different avenues. Right? We've all learned that same NASM model. We've come from some similar backgrounds, a little bit different. But really where the diversity comes into is how we wanted to apply this knowledge that we've gained. And today we're going to be able to really dig into what you've done as an entrepreneur and business owner. And a lot of it will come back still to utilizing the OPT model. But let's jump right in there with what you would say are some key steps you should take before launching a business.
Key step. I mean, are we talking about when I first opened up my facility or where we are today? Because
I would say, Ken, for our audience now. Right. I would say for our audience, maybe what people should do now, because I've always seen in the industry, people get certified and their first instinct is to not want to work for somebody else, that they only want to work for themselves. And there could be good and bad in that. But what advice would you give from your years of operating and owning a business for those that are looking at starting out that way?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marty, because what I had to do was when it came to opening my business, because I was in that very same situation that you brought up. I got tired of working for the man, quote unquote, the man. And I wanted to run things my way, how I saw that things should be run, because all of us know that when it comes to how we train using the NASM OPT model, that's the model that I use when it comes to working with my clients. But when I work in other facilities, let's say, when I was a strength coach, I had my teams, I can run my programming the way that I saw fit. But when I was working with another or under another strength coach, I had to do their model of training, which I learned a ton from those strength coaches that I had a chance to work with. But as an independent personal trainer, I can run things how I want it. Now, when it comes to planning and strategizing to open your own doors, you have to have a business plan. Now, I wrote a business plan because when I took out bank loans to open up my facility, I had to make a case for what I was going to do with that investment. Right now, if you have saved up the money or the means are there for you to open up your own doors, buying the equipment that you need, then you may not take that time to create a business plan and think out strategically how you're going to open your business, sustain your business, grow and scale your business. But when you are trying to borrow money and make those investments, people want to see that case. And what I really appreciated about that process, it really made me think about things that I didn't think about. What was I going to do for equipment? How am I going to augment my facility or my income if I wasn't training, or during the low times of the year? Let's say during the summer when your clients are gone, or during the winter when clients are on vacation, things like that. So you have to have contingency plans in place when it comes to opening your business. So those are the things that I had to think about when it came to actually putting on paper, not just how I wanted to train or who I wanted to train, but from the business side, I have a facility now that I have to support, because no matter how I'm doing as a trainer, my rent is still due, right? My insurance is still due. I still have to file my taxes. All that stuff doesn't wait for me to get busy. So I have to plan out and strategize. And those are the things that, when it comes to opening up your own facility, if you haven't thought about it, you have to.
Well, Ken, that kind of brings me into a question, because, teaching at the university level, all of the students have to take a class, and it's a business class. And I'm usually one of the ones that teach it. And I know it was very eye-opening for me looking at all of these different sheets, the capital and investments, looking at the, P&L and all of these different types of things that you needed to fill out, I'm sure, to get your loan from the bank. But if someone doesn't know that, because I know for me as a personal trainer, I didn't go into business. So if someone wants to create a business plan, but they've never done it before, what would you suggest for someone to help them through those specific steps to get that plan ready before they head to the bank?
Yeah, talk to someone who owns their facility. I mean, for every person that I've talked to that is an aspiring trainer that wants to open up their own doors, I suggest finding a facility owner that basically replicates your square footage, the equipment that you might want to incorporate into your business, and then talk to them, see how things are working for them, and basically ask the same questions you guys have asked me so far. What's your initial, what's your lease like? What are the terms of agreement? And that's one of the things that caught me off guard, was I'm signing a lease, and then you realize I have to sign a lease for 3 years if I want this monthly rate. If I go 5 years or 6 years, the terms are better. So then you think, okay, is this something I'm really committed to for that amount of time, right? And then the one thing that I'll also add into that is, what would you do differently? So if you're an aspiring trainer that wants to open up your own doors, find somebody who has a facility kind of like what you're doing. I suggest don't ask people in your area, because they'll see you as a competitor and they'll see you as somebody that's like a threat. So call another city, go online, look up personal training studios, look them up and see, okay, does this kind of look and feel where I want to be as an owner and operator of my own brick and mortar? And then, see if they'll give you 10, 15 minutes, have your questions lined up. And then that way, when you are planning things out, you can ask, okay, what are some things that you did not expect? Like for me, it was my deposit. It was something as simple as my deposit. It was $5,000. And I'm thinking, well, I got this amount saved up, but I didn't plan on spending $5,000 that day, right? So that was something that was a surprise to me, but it's something that everybody does when they're taking up a space.
Great points, Ken. And you touched on this, so I'm going to make you kind of go a little bit deeper on it. Is you want to own a business, but sometimes if you're just emulating what's out there, it'd be like opening up a horse and buggy, business before the car came out, right? So sometimes you got to look ahead and say, okay, where do I want to be, or where is the industry going? So maybe I can make myself a little more relevant if it matches up with my ideas and my passions and my abilities. So how do you identify and capitalize on the market opportunities in your area or in the industry, and especially if you're looking at trends?
Well, that's a great question, because a lot of trainers don't think that way, from the standpoint that, and I'm sure, Wendy, that you've taught in your class SWOT analysis, right? when you have to look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So I had to do that for myself, right? I had to do that for myself. A business plan and what I had to do, because when it came to working with clients in this area, very small area, Alameda. When I first moved here, some like 60,000 people in the city. Now there's 72,000 people, right? So my planning was, okay, well, how am I going to service 60,000 people, or a small percentage of that environment? So I went online and I looked around, and I talked to people who actually work out or have worked out with my competitors now. And, I'll do that in air quotes, because we're all trying to do the same thing, right? We're all trying to help people. And how can you hate somebody who's also trying to help people, right? They may have a different business, but there's enough people here that I can say that we're all here to help this same population. We're just all doing it in a different way. But to answer your question, Marty, I look at one of the neighbors down the street. They run more of a group exercise program, right? It's all classes, kind of like F45 or CrossFit or Orange Theory, which there are those facilities within 5 miles of me. So I have those national chains to contend with. So I don't want to swim in the same lake as those guys. So what I had to do is, okay, what's going to differentiate me from everybody else so that my business plan, it's still unique, but it's not, right? But how am I going to market my talents to cater to the same population, but have enough of a differentiator to where I'm more attractive, right, from a service standpoint, for getting new clients. And that's something that I've been able to tap into pretty well, because of how I look at how do I onboard people, or my niche being those that are more reconditioning, post rehab, corrective exercise, just trying to get back into shape, either from not being in shape or not exercising for the last 20 years, or those that have been injured and want a more responsible way of getting back into their sport so that their body is more resilient to activities, and again, preventing or decreasing the opportunity to get hurt again. That's my niche. So we all want our clients to, look better, feel better, move better. But how do I do that differently from the guy that's a mile that way, a guy that's a mile that way, or another guy that's a mile that way? And I'm talking literally. I have a competitor 1 mile away north, 1 mile away south, and one is northwest, a mile away from. Same within 200 square feet. The size of our facilities look almost exactly the same. So what is different? I mean, outside looks no different than the other, but how do the insides run differently to make me more attractive, or attractive in a different way from someplace else that somebody may go online or look for a referral towards?
Well, today we're talking building and sustaining your personal training business here on the Master Instructor Roundtable with myself, Wendy Batts, and Marty Miller, with our special guest and friend, Ken Miller. So my two Miller boys here joining us. And Ken, you're giving some great information, especially because I think this is important for all of us in the personal training world that want to think about opening our own business, especially if it is a brick and mortar type facility. And, you've talked about marketing and knowing your surroundings, the competitive, having competitors in your surrounding areas. But I'm going to take another step on maybe having you dive deep into finances. So if we were to think, what are some best practices for managing your finances and the resources? Because that definitely is, I hear, the hardest part of owning a business.
Yeah. And the reason why I responded like that, Wendy, was because that if there was ever a blind spot that I had, finances, that's it. Right. So to answer your question, real quick and simple, hire somebody to do it. There's apps out there to help track, but finances, that's, I want to train. I'm a trainer. That's what I want to spend 99.9% of my time doing. But you cannot ignore the finances, because nothing runs unless your bill's paid, right? And nobody wants anybody chasing them. So keeping things simple for yourself, spreadsheet. I'm not perfect, so there might be a month or two that might go by. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that I spent that much money on utilities, right? So as far as the finances go, just a lot of my stuff is fixed. It's going to be within a certain range. When I talk about utilities, my rent is going to be basically the same month in, month out. I know when my insurance policies are due, so when the payments are due for that, obviously taxes. But managing my income is where I spend most of my time, and I've been able to kind of offset a lot of the stress from managing finances by automatically putting money into savings. Okay. So I'll pay myself out, but for the most part, I put as much as I can into savings and try not to touch it, try not to see it, because if I know it's there, kind of like if we go to industry conferences or there's a cool program or a cool toy that I want to buy for, even if it's for the facility, I still have to think, can I afford that? Is that something that I can do? So just put it away. If I don't see it, I don't have it. But tracking can be as easy as you want it to be. There's a lot of apps out there. Hire somebody to take care of your business, because I've tried doing that all by myself and it just takes me hours, and I'm sure I did it wrong. But for the most part, that if there's any blind spot that I had to start with, but something that I had to eventually accept and embrace, is just the financials. You have to look at it, just know where you are. You may not like what you see. And I think that's what a lot of people have trouble with. They don't like what they see, but you have to know what your situation is. And if you know, from the seasonal standpoint, the way personal training works for a lot of people, you're going to have your highs and your lows when it comes to clients coming in and clients not showing up. So if you can plan for that, from a revenue standpoint, then that will alleviate a lot of stress, because you've planned for it, you're prepared, you've got your savings, put stuff away, not just savings for you when you want to retire, if you want to retire, but savings in case you have those unexpected expenses.
Well, Ken, that's great. Going back to SWOT analysis, you got to know your weaknesses, right, and opportunities. So
Yeah.
we appreciate that. So shifting gears a little bit, can you offer some tips for scaling your business? Because we do want to grow, most of us, right, while maintaining some quality and customer satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Well, scaling, we can talk about that from a couple different perspectives. One, scaling from the standpoint of working with more clients. Well, there's only so much time in a day, so much time in a week, that if I want to work with more clients, scaling it from that perspective, some clients who are more independent, more confident, and more adept at doing their own workouts, they don't need me to hold them accountable as much. Those guys I'll work with less frequently, once a week, once every other week, once a month, some people. And that opens the opportunity for me to have more of an open time slot that I can take a new client in. As far as how I run my business, my facility, training station, is an open space facility. So I actually host, at this time, 6 trainers who use my space for their own personal training client business. So how I scale that is I get more trainers to come in and rent space from me. Some are at a fixed, they're busy enough, they're at a fixed monthly rate, they're training as much as they want. And those that are just maybe training 3-4 hours a week, they may pay me more of an hourly rate for their use of the facility. So scaling from a revenue generation standpoint, where I don't have to do one more bit of business or one more bit of work to make more revenue, I just have trainers that will come in and rent space for me. So if we're talking from that side of things, pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, I had 4 trainers working, renting space for me. Pre-pandemic, things shut down. I kept one person stayed out of 5, and I've got 5 now 4 of which are just new people that have come into the fold since a couple years ago. So I've had to scale before, and I had to scale again from a rental standpoint, from a space rental standpoint. So that's where I've scaled as far as my clientele. I've scaled as far as trainers renting from me. I've not gone the Rick Ritchie route and scaled from the standpoint of opening multiple doors. I don't have that threshold of stress that he has to do that. So yeah, it is about accepting opportunities where I don't have to do another bit of work. And that's how I've been able to do it.
Nice. So Ken, what are some common obstacles new businesses face, and then how do you navigate those?
New obstacles. New
businesses. What are some obstacles that new businesses will face? If they're going to do this, what do they need to know?
I think the obstacles that you have to, there's a lot of myth busting, right? Or there's a lot of information floating around out there that clients, they'll watch Huberman or Peter Attia, and they're getting a lot of great information. So you have this educated, informed clientele, but they don't know how to work things for them, that they don't know how to translate that information for their benefit. So I think one obstacle is that with all the information that's out there, podcasts, webinars, personal trainers that are selling programs, there's a lot of stuff coming through the screen that people are getting educated on. So I think from a personal trainer standpoint or a business owner standpoint, one of the obstacles is basically just a lot of information floating around there. And I think a little bit of people have a false sense of confidence, really, as far as how to work that information to benefit their goals and enhancing their lifestyle. If you do one thing that works you for the better, you're going to be better for it, no doubt. But if you want to achieve things in a certain timeline, time frame, a certain level of progress, that may not translate. So obstacles for me, I had to do a lot of re-education and translating the information that's out there more so now. And just saying, hey, that's all great and that's all good, but here's your life and here are the conditions that you have to accept and deal with first before, if you want to take creatine, great, but what are you doing to improve stability and first before you take the supplement that has been proven over and over and over again to be effective for strength, cognition, power, but also obstacles when it comes to trainers not just having to educate on myths and misconceptions, but there's also the tools and toys, the things that we're battling from the dawn of time when it comes to fitness, right? You had, and Wendy, you and I have done that podcast on, all the, the butt blaster, the thigh master, and all these things that people have that they think, I spent $300, it's got to work. So why should I spend $50 with you, $100 with you when I just made this big investment? And you don't want to tell anybody they made a wrong decision, but you made a wrong decision. No, but let's try to do what we can to make better decisions. So obstacles are tools, education that's out there that just has to be tweaked and translated to help benefit trainers as far as their ability to communicate, okay, what's the best thing for this client at this time?
Thanks for that, Ken. Now, you mentioned the deposit kind of was something you didn't think about when you were about to open your doors. So let's go to when your doors were opened. Was there anything that surprised you about owning your own business that you didn't think about, until after you turned that key and were open for business?
I think in my situation, it was more things didn't happen as fast as I wanted them to, right? And you know how many trainers that I talked to, and if there was one thing that did not go right is, well, I projected I was going to have so many clients, so many hours of training, and that was going to lead to X, Y, and Z incomes, and my bank account was going to look like that. But one of the things that I learned really fast, second, third month, I was like, oh, I don't have these many hours. I don't have this many clients that I'm training. So my bank account does not look like that. Right. So I think as far as one of the surprises was, it's like, okay, so I'm now behind in my projections. And the problem that happened with that is that now I started to chase it mentally, right? I'm stressing out because my revenue's not there. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? It's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I just have to keep with it and stay consistent, stay the course, and just be patient. And that was the biggest lesson I learned, was I had to be patient, because at that time, part of my business plan was to host NASM live workshops. And because it's a mile from my house, I teach the workshops. And so I was working from that standpoint. And based on the trainers that came into the facility, if they were local, hopefully I could get them to come there to train. Well, that didn't happen as fast as I would hope. But that was my plan. That was on my business plan, not just as a training facility for trainers to train in, but also as an education facility to where I can market the facility, the location, the amenities, and get trainers to train there. And that did not happen as fast as I thought, or I had hoped it would go, but it happened eventually, but I just had to wait for it. Right. So that's one of the biggest challenges is being patient, right? Giving yourself a little bit bigger runway or a longer runway, but also the fact that, you can't stress yourself out and want to chase money that never came in, right? All you have is today. And what are you going to do today to move forward?
Well, that brings me into kind of the next question. You and I have done multiple podcasts. Here's a plug, y'all. If you haven't been downloading and listening to Random Fit, you should, because Ken and I talk about a lot of topics, especially along the lines of boosting business and getting people through the doors, and also trying to get out into the community. And Ken, I know you've done a lot of things and you do a lot of things within your community, but what are some actionable tips that you can provide to our audience to help them boost their own business? Because I know what you've done. I think it's great. And I think you should share that with everyone.
Yeah. The community involvement is huge. Again, one of my missions by having a facility is to affect the community in which I live, right? Because like I said, 60,000, 72,000 now population here in Alameda. You're going to run into people at the grocery stores, running on the street, kids playing sports together. So you're going to see people. And that was a big driver for me to get and maintain a good reputation within my community, because it takes one bad comment, one sour relationship for somebody to say, don't go to that guy. He is not good. And that's actually death when it comes to fitness in a small community. So being a good community member, right? Being involved with your community, because one, it's a network opportunity, but two, I want to be a good neighbor to those that I'm going to see every day, every other day. But the other part of it is be involved with different aspects of where you work. So I'm a board member with the Friends of the Park Foundation, where we help raise money that support parks and recs. So it upgrades, replaces, maintains parks and facilities, which I have an investment in because I use the parks. So community events, more so to help with the parks and rec. But once people figure out what I do and how I affect, how I'm part of the business community within Alameda, that's just another way for me to get my name out there as not just a community member, but also a business member. But also I'll do things like I'll support running events by providing recovery tools for running events, things like that. So find events that you as a personal trainer, that you find passion in. And, it's no better way to spend a Saturday or Sunday than to get out there and market, talk to your neighbors. I mean, there's been a lot of times where I've talked to people. It's like, oh, you live right around the block. Right. And from me as a person who lives here, but also some people like, oh, that's your facility. I walk by there every day when I walk my dog. So anything you can do to help get the word out on how you can help someone's life, be a little bit better from your services, and no better way than to do that than through marketing, through events, marketing and networking through other allied health professionals like physical therapists, massage therapists, sports coaches. Once they understand what you do, then you're in a great spot as a performance enhancement specialist or a corrective exercise specialist within your community.
Now, Ken, that's great. We've talked about this many times. Even if I'm in a facility, I'm my own business, I have to be visible, and people are going to watch what I do, how I communicate, how I carry myself. So clearly that extends to once you have some brick and mortar that is your own facility. So thank you for that. So love the topic. Could go on forever, but this will be my last question to you, Ken. What has been the hardest part of owning your own business?
The hardest part, it's the, I don't know, Marty, that's a great question. I mean, you've got me stumped on that one, because I've had my facility now since 2016. So 8 years? 8 years now. Wait, is that right? Yeah, 8 years. But I've, all of us have been training for 25 plus years. So to say that there's a hard part that stumps me and something that I don't look forward to, like I already talked about the financials, and yes, I don't like April 15th. However, I you know what, Marty, I can't say that there's a hard part of my day or a hard part of my week or a hard part of my month.
Ken, that might mean you're doing the right thing then, right? It should be challenging, but if it's not hard, it just is. And maybe that's the answer, is that you've aligned yourself in the right career because you don't see anything as hard. You just see it as the next obstacle. And since there's a passion, we just move through it.
Yeah. I mean, you as far as getting new clients and maintaining my hours of training, yeah, you have to market, you have to promote, you have to ask for referrals. But I mean, there's been, I went years without focusing on my website, years without focusing on outward marketing, because a lot of my business is word of mouth business. So, and you guys have referred people to me. I just had a referral from our buddy in North Carolina, and he just referred somebody to me. So driving business, which I know is the biggest part for a lot of trainers, it's when they lose a client, the next thing they're worried about is, how am I going to replace that $500 or $600 of revenue a month because I've lost that client? Well, for me, that hasn't been a worry, or I'd say it's a concern. Everything's a concern when you're a business owner. But I've always had the confidence in myself that, enough people know about me and what I do and how I help people, that people are going to come in eventually and do that. But I did have to streamline my internet presence through my website, kenmillerpt.com, and trainingstation.org, to give people a little bit more information on what to do, so they're not asking as many questions. But for the most part, if your marketing is dialed in and people are looking at you, they're Googling your business, you've got good what's it called when people talk about you? Comments, testimonials, right? If you have good testimonials, things that speak to you and how you run yourself as a business, all you got to do is, like I said, be patient, be consistent, keep expanding your skill sets, and, everything else will take care of itself as a personal trainer. But you got to find passion in it, because it's just like what you said, Marty, because I've been doing this for long. I love what I do. It's just a part of, you open your eyes, you take a breath, it's there.
Love it.
So if you build it, it will come. Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying, Ken?
I think there's a movie.
My favorite movie ever, but anyway.
Love that movie too. But so can I have one final question, because I know
Yeah.
you're super busy and you have clients coming up, so I don't want to make you late for them. But my final question is one that people have asked me, and it really makes me take a step back. And if you had to give your young self advice, what is one thing that you wish you could tell yourself then that you know now?
I love that question. Because, you put yourself in the time machine, you have to remember, okay, where were you mentally? Where were you physically? Where were you educationally? And then what do I have to do to kind of drill a point that resonates with somebody who's, 20 years younger? And what I would say to the young Ken Miller, the dashing, handsome, full head of hair Ken Miller, would be...
Sorry.
Hey, you don't have to laugh so hard, Wendy.
I'm just grinning. I didn't.
Were you laughing at the handsome, dashing, or the full head of hair? Is just be patient, because there's still, we don't know where fitness is going to be 10, 15 years. So if we all look 20 years ago, could we have seen where fitness is today? Could we have seen that we'd be consuming so much digitally? Going through Zoom workouts, how many apps are out there? So to project into another 20 years, I'd say be patient, keep doing what you're doing. Human anatomy, exercise physiology, as information comes out, you have to study it. You have to be on the forefront. You have to know what's happening, and you have to know how that will impact how you program design, because what I teach now is not what I taught before NASM, right? Totally different format of training before I got exposed to the OPT model. But it's just, you have to be able to roll with the punches, be accepting of some of the newer technology information. And if it stands the test of time, if it makes sense, research it, dive into it, but don't jump on the first cool thing that you said, oh, that's awesome, right? I got to get me that. But, from that standpoint, you got to be patient, research, spend some time looking into things. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. And that's what I would tell the younger, dashing, handsome, full head of hair Ken Miller.
Well, Ken, we could, like I said, sit here for hours and reminisce, because we've seen our careers transcend a lot of changes in the industry, but also we've all grown together in this industry. So we can't thank you enough for your time today. And I am sure we will be bringing you back at some point.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the invitation and being a part of Master Instructor Roundtable. So appreciate you.
Ken.
Good seeing you.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Ken.
Well, Wendy, as always, it's fun to bring in a fellow long-term NASM instructor like the three of us, now that everyone's got to meet Ken here on the Master Instructor Roundtable. So I'm glad you brought Ken in. It was, can always learn from a guy like that.
Yes. And those of you guys that have been not listening to Random Fit, I know I keep talking about it, but it is super fun. So you guys need to be a part of our show when we do it, because Ken and No Hair Ken and myself have been through it. And so I think we talk about a lot of fun stuff. And Marty, we've had you on, and we'll have to bring you on for that show too. But thanks for letting us kind of reminisce. And Ken's been amazing, obviously, working in Alameda with his community, and then being a part of being a business owner, which is something that I don't have to worry about here. And Marty, I know you don't as well either. So it's kind of nice to get a different perspective.
Without a doubt. So Wendy, once again, great job. And for all of you that joined us, thank you so much. And as always, most importantly, we look forward to seeing you next week on the Master Instructor Roundtable.